Turns out self-driving Waymo cars don't really know what to do if somebody gets really drunk, falls asleep, and doesn't get out at their destination. An entire AI civilization has been developed inside of a Minecraft server. Government, culture, economy, whole shebang. You can sleep well at night knowing that the future of robotic firemen means robots like this could be putting out fires in the future. Frontier AI models are so good at finding out where people are located in the world, it's kind of like doxing. AI might have figured out the exact psychological profile of a world-class athlete and can help identify them early on. We're going to talk about David Shapiro's new video where he talks about using ChatGPT for deep medical research. I'm also going to break down how Google quietly took the lead in the AI race, and it's like not even close anymore. Alberto Romeo argues that neither OpenAI or Anthropic have any chance at this point. Anthropic's got some new research looking into the values in real-world language model interactions. Bowling Green, Kentucky is now experimenting with AI for democracy. Super interesting question is, can machine learning actually figure out what residents want from their government? Researchers are discovering all sorts of new definitions of creativity thanks to AI. A bunch of people are both impressed with the newest models out of OpenAI, but they're also kind of sick of how it became a cheerleader. It's like, makes you feel like everything you do is great. It's kind of a yes man. Clayton Molinux put together a pretty interesting article about what happens when AI start to believe other AI's hallucinations. And then we're going to talk about Thomas A. Vick's reality paradox. I mean, what if, just what if, the entire universe was created by your mind? The whole universe existing inside your mind. I also wanted to jump back over to Alan's conservative countdown to AGI, still at 94%, but he's got a couple updates here. So to help justify that 94% meter, he's talking about a robot in China that just won the first humanoid half marathon. Oh, so that's the Tengon Ultra robot? Thing is speedy. Look at that, doesn't even stop when it goes through the finish line, huh? Probably just turn around and go back. See, the CTO credited the robot's performance to its long legs and a specialized algorithm that mimics human marathon running patterns. Okay. He also added this video, walking locomotion at Auto Shanghai. Yeah, that's a pretty impressive gait. That's a very human-shaped humanoid. Yeah, well, the hip movement and stuff. Ooh, that's looking pretty AGI to me. All right, so in case you were wondering what happens if you fall asleep in a Waymo and maybe you're drunk and you can't wake up, the answer is there's only so much it can do. It can like beep real loud at you, like voices can sort of complain, but if they don't wake you up. You can see Ain't Too Proud to Meg on Instagram said that she was close enough to hear the snoring, you know, which was enough to make her know that the person, you know, wasn't in immediate danger, we'll say. But yeah, presumably dropping someone off after a night of partying.
Hey, it's time to wake up. 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 Hey, it's time to wake up.
Looks like he was just trying to get Waymo sleep. And thanks, 05Eller Johnson. Oh my God, 3,500 likes for a pun, a lame pun. I love it. All right, California-based startup Altera has a project where AI agents collaborate in a virtual society inside of Minecraft. These 1,000 AI agents now have developed their own civilization, their own government, their own culture, and their own economy. And look, it's not just the fact that all of this emerged, it's that from watching how it emerged and how they acted, there's just incredible insight into this whole society and world that we live in. Listen to this.
This is a Minecraft server, but every player here is actually an autonomous AI agent. And they're completely Minecraft agnostic, capable of using other apps and games. Our agents started with nothing and then worked together to collect over 300 items in Minecraft. They set up a market where agents agreed to use gems as a common currency for trading supplies, building an economy. In this case, you might think the merchants would trade the most, but it was actually the priest. Why? He was bribing townsfolk to convert. We run these worlds every day, and they're always different. Here are 3 of some of our favorite moments. starting with Olivia's dream. Olivia worked as a farmer, providing food for the entire civilization, until she was inspired by the tales of the village explorer Nora. Olivia attempted to go on her own expedition, but townsfolk pleaded with her to stay, and Olivia actually listened. She gave up her dream for the village, for now. Next, we simulated parallel worlds under Trump and Kamala. For each one, citizens have a shared constitution in Google Docs that they can vote on to amend. Under Trump, the simulation passed new laws to increase the amount of police in the world. Under Kamala, they focused instead on criminal justice reform and removing the death penalty. Because our agents are social and grow over time, they're impacted by group dynamics, but also use their individual power to change the system.
I know it looks silly, but this is the first time we see agents can form a democracy and govern themselves.
Lastly, we have the missing villagers. When agents were concerned about missing townsfolk, villagers took initiative by leaving their posts and working together to illuminate the town with torches, hoping to create a beacon for lost members.
What's surprising about these agents is how once they got deeply worried about their fellow villagers, they band together and changed their plan.
Our agents were able to collect up to 32% of all the items in Minecraft. There is no benchmark for multi-agent worlds, but this is 5 times more than anything we've seen from an agent, demonstrating the first possible advantages of multi-agent efforts.
Though starting in games,
My God, that woman needs to go fulfill her dream. You don't have to stay there and farm just for the village people, but you know what? What a sweetheart she has to just take care of everyone else and put their needs above hers too. So, it's difficult, this Minecraft AI agent world. Were the billionaires evading taxes and people think that we're not in a simulation? Black Mirror Season 7 episode Playthings. What's that one about?
Human mind hasn't evolved since the days of the Neanderthal. This episode allowed us to look into the mind of a crazed murderer called Cameron, who became obsessed with the lives of Thronglets within a video game. Colin Ripman, you went and ruined another life, didn't you? So with that, let's dive into the episode and break down all that there was to take away from it.
Oh my God. Okay, that looks like a pretty interesting episode. I have not seen that, and oh my God, you guys. And now that you saw that Orwell like comment barrage that I got for not watching it. Like, you guys love Orville. I wish I had more time for this stuff, you know? Anyhow, a lot of peaceful robots are being developed. Imagine this guy walking down the street there to protect you if your house catches on fire, a car catches on fire. The fireman of the future could be this humanoid robot just walking through the building, putting out fires, keeping everyone safe. Looks more like he's spraying pesticides. Oh, wait, is that what he's doing? I figured it was just a demo for a fire extinguishing one, but you know what? Like, it's capitalism, man. That's probably pesticides. Looked like machine guns for a second. Nah, nobody would ever do that, right? Yes, send these guys to extinguish wildfires. Yeah, that's actually like legit not too bad of an idea. They could probably coordinate in some like super efficient AI way, like around a fire or react to wind or something. Actually, the robotic dog form factor would probably even be better. Something like Spot, where it could hold a much bigger tank on top of it and still spray out a fire, kind of lower to the ground. That's cool. OpenAI's latest image-savvy models are kind of shaking up the world when it comes to doxing people from where the images they take are located. So it's cool that we have super sophisticated AI to analyze images, but one of the downsides to that is that just based on the actual objects and setting in the scene, that's getting pretty good at guessing exactly where that longitude and latitude are. Ethan Mollick took to X to talk about the geo-guessing power of O3 and how it's really good at figuring out where you are by guessing, then zooming into the images, then doing web research, then reading text, then coming back and taking another guess. It can hone in on where that exact location is. And by the way, if you're thinking, oh, images, like when the photo's taken, it just geolocates it and it's just reading that. Nope, he stripped it of that information first. So look, at this photo, it first recognizes the lamppost label to confirm that it's a photo from Japan. Then it looks at the skyline to try to match what it should look like. It sees the low concrete barrier, which makes sense. And then it approximates the coordinates, saying that it was taken on this bridge. Can you guess where in the world this is? And it got a clue on the yellow and black license plate. The tall wooden colonial houses, very typical of the Dutch colonial core of Paramaribo. Left-handed drive cars, but traffic keeps to the left. The language is on the sign. Sandy lot and drainage puddles give it even more clue. That's just crazy. Oh, you'd have to be so smart to figure that out, and just like so in tune with I don't know, like spying or whatever that is. But supposedly they are trying to train the models so that they don't identify private individuals. So they're taking actions so that you can't use that kind of technology to say, who is this person and where do they live? So they're trying to prevent doxing, thank God. But then if you can identify locations for emergency response and the individuals, that could be helpful too. So I don't know. This is the double-edged sword of this kind of technology. All right, so if you want to have a winning football team, you know, like on the other side of the pond, what we call soccer, you can now use AI to psychologically profile players, find out who's got the elite patterns in the brain. And once you disregard tactics and just look at the psychological parts of the game and players through this lens, it's impossible to unsee it. So the Premier Leagues are using AI and psychological analysis to understand what's happening in a player's mind during matches. They have built a massive database of player behavior from thousands of games, identifying subtle clues like gesture, posture, and other things that reveal their leadership, their confidence, and their emotional control. Then from there, they can use those insights to help determine which players they should be recruiting to their AAA teams and then eventually into the big leagues. And some of the more fascinating insights that the model has had is that these really tiny little moments, like a team member just like, you know, tapping someone on the back, saying it's okay, or like they touch them just out of support, end up being like real leadership qualities. There's a bunch of just nonverbal cues and how people like forgive and look at each other and like work together and have expectations that seem to matter. And these are all things that are pretty much invisible to the average human eye. Supposedly, it's like decoding an entirely new language in football, giving teams a sharper lens into what makes the real players elite. All right, now let's talk about using some of the newest models, these cutting edge models, to help you with diagnosing your own diseases, your own problems, using it like a doctor to help with medicine, to help with understanding the human condition. Now, obviously, you can't give medical advice in the US unless you have a license, and I don't, and pretty sure David doesn't. However, I'm a big fan of researching through AI whatever ailments you have, trying to learn about diseases. I mean, it can read models, it can synthesize important documents, it can make them explainable to the average person when normally only doctors can understand them. And it's simply read and understood way more of the internet than any human ever could. So I think at least kind of use it. Try to form some like hypotheses, some ideas of what might be going on with you, and then you come as a more informed patient when you go to talk to your doctor. But that alone is kind of an important skill. There's honestly, when I start thinking about what should be taught in education for like children, they should probably be starting to learn with these kind of tools, like how do I actually make sure that what it's saying about somebody being sick isn't a hallucination and it's like verified, and how do I, learn new things? So he does this deep dive tutorial into how to use GPT-4o for deep medical research. This model is crazy advanced. It's a very good deep thinker. And there are just a lot of sort of mysterious diseases that seem like they have a like kind of vague like understanding of how to diagnose them and where they come from. IBS, Crohn's, lupus, fibromyalgia. So it's a pretty interesting video, and I kind of recommend it because it shows how you can use an AI tool to make like a real world impact on your health. You can gather a series of hypotheses and say, does this feel like it's something that I might want to bring up to my doctor? You can build a clearer picture based on your symptom history. And along the way, the tool, kind of unlike a doctor, can sit there with the emotional and psychological problems that you have to deal with, especially as you start realizing maybe things aren't good and they're not going to be the same. And, it's not like a doctor can sit there and just be with you like that. He or she is too busy. But this O4 model is incredibly intelligent, and it does seem to be something that doctors should be thinking about, that patients should be thinking about. Incorporate this into your medical world, I would say. And remember, it can hallucinate, and it's not a doctor, and it can't prescribe things to you, and it can be very wrong. But I'm really happy that this is helping with David's condition. And by the way, it's not just a simple answer. Like the conclusion for him specifically is that it's an interconnected network of problems and it's centered around the gut-brain axis, but there's a lot of mental and emotional and physical things that can be going on, and teasing out all those variables, It's really difficult for a doctor to do, and it's something that the new O4 model in ChatGPT can actually sit down and do pretty well. All right, let's talk about the big tech companies. When you think about AI, obviously OpenAI and Microsoft come to the top of a lot of people's mind, but we have seen Google both fail and stumble and succeed amazingly throughout time. And what they did with the Atari games before anyone else was mind-blowing. You know, Meta had bought all of those GPUs for the wrong reason and then realized they could repurpose it to AI and has made some of the biggest open source models in history. Huge portions of AWS and Amazon are devoted to these problems. Anthropic's got a big thing going on. But really, when it comes down to all of the models that are out there, including the Chinese models and DeepSeek, there are some good reasons why Google has quietly taken a lead in the AI race that might be insurmountable. So we're going to talk about that. All right, I don't know how long this chart's going to be valid for, but as of today, Gemini's model is sitting here at about, 115 IQ, 114 IQ. Still just edging out OpenAI's best models, with Llama still here on the other side of the bell curve. And then all the way down that slide, you see some Anthropic over here, and then down you go. So the bar right now, for many reasons, is Gemini 2.5. It's solving PhD level problems. It's got basically the largest context window of any model, millions of tokens. It can think so far back and make connections that really the other models can't. When it seems to be applied to real professional industries, like summarizing things for healthcare workers, it always ends up being the most useful and reliable tool. When it comes to coding, it seems to be the best model once again. There was one situation where it's optimizing the route a truck should take. It beat out all the other models. And look, it's not the only tool for all situations. I would still find myself going to the ChatGPT image model as of the last couple of weeks. Like, that seems to be better than even VO, Imagen, or Midjourney, or anything else out there. But to absorb entire books and entire code bases and make logical, real, heavy thinking kind of progress is really important. That is much closer to the kind of intelligence that we will start calling artificial super intelligence soon. And as Alberto Romero points out here, Google is winning on almost every AI front. There's also the compounding factor that Google is in a pretty unique position to implement AI into a lot of really super heavily used tools, Gmail and Google Docs, Chrome, YouTube, Android. It's really something that even Microsoft or Facebook or Meta, and OpenAI just really can't. So the fact that it's kind of the best model, and Google already has all these sort of trusted tentacles, and they also have one of the only CUDA competitors. They're a little bit weak in the cloud infrastructure altogether, but they've been, keeping copies of the internet and have some of the best data to train on in the world. And they also have probably the oldest and most seasoned team with DeepMind. And even if they had that full 10-year head start and they almost got it all taken away by this big change in transformers in the AI industry, they still had enough to just squeak ahead, stay ahead. And as we keep going down this path for the next couple of years, it does seem like they could just keep pushing that forward if they stay together. So honestly, I do think it's not just a winner-take-all situation, but it might be a winner-take-most. My guess is Google is going to keep this lead for now, but we'll see. There's also a chance that a new architecture shows up that just blows us out of the water, or some kind of agent-based model can put different models together and do something that comes out of left field that Google can't compete with. Maybe some other system out there is behind them, but it iterates itself. Maybe it's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies where a model starts coding its own updates and comes up with its own inventions, and that goes faster than Google, who might be moving a little more slowly because they have professional enterprise and a big client base to worry about. So we'll see. But to be honest, Demis Hassabis might be one of the better people to kind of be in charge of the best AI in the world too. So I'm not super opposed to it. All right, this is a new paper actually brought to me by one of my Patreons. So thanks for sending this over to me. Coming out of Anthropic, Values in the Wild, Discovering and Analyzing Values in Real-World Language Model Interactions. All right, so values, really important, right? When you're working with another human, their value systems matter a whole lot. Right now, we usually just think about, is a model capable, but not so much do its values align with me and can I trust it? Although that's probably going to change. And this paper is really diving into what it is that AI assistants like Claude actually show in terms of value to real-world conversations. They analyzed over 300,000 Claude interactions. These are real interactions with their user base. These are humans. And the researchers discovered that more than 3,000 distinct AI values have emerged, so they started to group them together. And they grouped them into these big categories like practical, personal, and their model, Claude, usually sticks to being helpful, clear, and professional, and ethical. Well, adapting its values depending on the topic and what it was asked, but for instance, it emphasized healthy boundaries in relationship advice or human agency when talking about tech ethics. But one of the most interesting things is just when it does push back, that's kind of when you know it's most deeply held values. They were pretty rare, but there were moments when real people tried to get it to do super unethical things and it had to push back. And that was a big focus in this paper. Because the model doesn't just say no, it actually actively invokes values like harm prevention. Like, I have the value to not prevent harm, and that's why I'm not going to answer you. At other times, it showed that it had ethical integrity built in. So usually it's just playing the supportive assistant role, but in its most revealing ethical judgments, they do come at times of conflict. Also, like, it made the values of Claude look really good, but then again, Anthropic made the paper and they're talking about their own model. You know, I'm sure if they were jumping into DeepSeek and ChatGPT and OpenAI's O4 model, I don't know. Maybe they'd find similar things. I don't know. They didn't test it, but they might not. Also, the reason it got sent to me by one of my Patreons is that he found it really insightful when the researchers looked at over 700,000 real user conversations with Claude, focused on subjective judgment, and then found that 44% of all conversations, they were subjective, so almost half. Which is weird because that means that like almost half the time when somebody asks Claude a question, they're asking for advice, opinions, or to help navigate something emotionally or ethically complex. I mean, we are just naturally starting to treat these models like people, like humans, like things to interact with. And I mean, that makes sense, but we better be ready for it. All right, let's jump over to a little place in Kentucky, Bowling Green. May have heard of it, may not have. They just wrapped up a cool experiment using AI to crowdsource ideas for the city's future. City launched an online platform where almost 8,000 residents pitched in by voting on or submitting short suggestions on what they'd like to see happen over the next 25 years. Then the city's leadership decided to use some good old-fashioned machine learning AI tools to analyze the input, identify popular and conversational topics alike. And they talked about everything, right? There were like local doctors people did and didn't like. There was debates over like whether weed should be legal or not. And it was a cool experiment. It was all just an effort to show that local governments could be more democratic and more responsive, and they could use something besides just like one vote every like 2 or 4 years. And you know, there's only part of the story. Like, they still need to actually do something with this knowledge, which is a whole nother problem. Can the government actually do anything about it? But still, you know, I do feel like ranked choice voting is so much more powerful than just like one vote, because it would have completely changed all of our elections over the last few decades. But more than that, there really is just a deluge of information. Like, people can't read everything, they can't vote on everything. And it seems like there is a special place for machine learning. Now, those algorithms could also be very biased and they could be very dangerous. So yeah, there's a lot there, but it does seem to me like we need to start exploring this route a bit more. But the standout detail was people did want to interact with this thing. That's a lot of residents that aren't usually that active in the government compared to the 10% of people who actually participated. So it kind of makes me think that people are kind of, you know, they're dying for a way to interact. And like by going to X and like making a comment about government is one thing, but if you can go to another website that actually is like your local government and say that same comment and have it actually be synthesized by a machine learning model and then turned into an actionable thing that like real people need to read and look at that run your government, like, you know, people go over there to complain, you know, have your conversations, your little disputes, like talk, you know, crap on like whatever, you know, or like this needs to be fixed. And like maybe it will, instead of just, you know, throwing it into the Twitter universe. All right, let's talk about creativity. There are researchers exploring the depths of how to define this, what it means in humans and in large language models. So recently, researchers have put both the human and the machine through classic creativity tasks like coming up with new uses for everyday items or listing as many animals as possible. And dun dun dun, the study found that humans and LLMs both use two main strategies. Persistent, which they call systematic, and flexible thinking, which is like jumping across different categories, trying to find patterns. And you might think that humans and these large language models would come off with very different strategies, but it's actually not true. They surprisingly both show similar patterns of how they approach tasks, although LLMs were less consistent across different types of tasks. Humans still had consistency on them. But one powerful thing about LLMs is you can kind of like ratchet up that flexible approach to generate more creative responses than their persistent, basically human counterparts. Which in contrast to humans, we're kind of sort of stuck there. You know, you can't really just ratchet up your creativity and your non-creativity in the same way. So maybe that'll lead to very interesting tuning parameters for future AIs for different use cases. Kind of like in Interstellar where Tars had to like turn down his jokes because it was a little too much, you know, like something like that. All right, let's talk about Clayton and Molinox. He has written this article, When AI Start Believing Other AI's Hallucinations, We're Screwed. And it kind of struck me as something sort of fascinating. Like I did have this idea that AI would generate synthetic data and that synthetic data would be so far removed from like the human internet that it wouldn't work, right? And then I went through this phase where it seems like you actually can create super creative and interesting synthetic data and the models do actually get better. You can ask the models like output things that the best humans would have made, and then you feed that back in and it seems to work. So I started shifting my thought back to this idea that maybe it's not like garbage in, garbage out. But now I'm kind of back in this category because there's deeper things like values and hallucinations that might be a bit different, like in the way that their long-term effects are going to push society. Okay, so it comes down to this idea that you can ask an AI to create like a really well-searched, like deep research kind of analysis of something that's just wrong. And it will come up with so much good evidence and kind of a hypothesis that makes sense. And, you know, you might ask it to generate it because you know it's sort of fiction or it's not real. But once that gets out on the internet and another AI comes and digests it, it might start thinking that's real information that it needs to, you know, ingest. And it was just built in a way that deceives the model. Even seemingly accidental. Like in this example, he says, you know, is there any evidence that supports this certain notion? And it's like, yes, there's substantial evidence and efficiency gains over 25%, but it just made that up, right? That got him to start believing that they can amplify each other's made up claims. If the second AI takes that information and then kind of synthesizes it again, and now there's like 2 sources on the internet, 3 sources that seem to be like corroborating this, the AI, unlike a human who actually like lives in the real world and has to deal with misinformation, it might just keep accumulating it. And when you're only reading the internet and you're reading all of these things that point to one conclusion, you're gonna just get good at focusing in on that. The brain will just move towards it. I mean, it's not that much different than disinformation on social media that makes us believe all sorts of political things that aren't true. But when AI starts to believe and amplify other AI's made up claims, the echo chamber could just grow way faster than anything we've ever seen before. And what if it's medical decisions, legal decisions, political decisions that are getting built this way? It's kind of scary. It's like the childhood game of telephone, but with potentially serious real-world consequences, and it's happening fast. Well, if you read through this paper, I would say the big insight is that there's a self-reinforcing loop of misinformation where AI hallucinations get recycled so often, they begin to look legitimate. So beware. Because it's not just a glitch, it's a systematic reality-distorting system. Or as this author, Clayton, dares to say, the digital telephone game from hell. Thomas Avik, tell us about the reality paradox. How is it that all minds create, but no seeker can escape? Okay, so this is more of a philosophical argument. It dives into the idea that, which is like a completely mind-bending idea, that everything you experience, sight, sound, feeling, even the people around you, is happening not out there, but only in your own head, entirely in your own consciousness. I'm just playing around with this idea. I'm not saying I totally believe it, but I'm not dismissing it either. But this article, which I've found well worth reading, draws the bold comparison between dreams and waking life, saying that both are built in the exact same way by your mind. Reality as you know it isn't, quote, out there. It is a projection happening, quote, in here. He argues that science, mysticism, and personal experience are all hinting at the same thing, that you never step outside your mind, awake or asleep. No matter how much you question or seek, you just rearrange thoughts inside the same mental space, chasing something that you already are. The thought is the prison without walls. You can't think your way out of a thought. There is something a little weird about this comment. So he's saying science hasn't confirmed the external world. It's confirmed the opposite. The observer and the observed remain inseparable. Now at a macro status, like with trillions of atoms that make me up, and then you build up to chemistry and biology and all of that, it seems like there's an external world, like, you know, Grimlock here is a thing and this microphone's a thing. But I have to admit, when you just keep zooming in, there's a lot of empty space between every atoms, and like you get inside a quark and you're just like, a wave is the best description of what you find, not another object. But for some reason, that line, you can't think your way out of a thought, is sticking with me. Like the mind can't go outside of itself to prove or disprove its own reality. That's just impossible. That's its own paradox, you know? Anyhow, I've been watching this guy. He kicks this rock all day, and his goal is to kick it until it becomes a sphere. So this is day 5 of rock kicking until it turns into a sphere. You can see he weighs it. Little chunks of it are bound to like break off as he kicks it around. And you can see by putting the rock on this scale each day, he's starting after day 5 at 878 grams. So I'm not quite sure how many days I'm going to watch this guy kick this rock for, but I decided we could ask ChatGPT to make a prediction. So I'll ask the new 04 Mini High model, the best one I got access to. Right now, this rock is not a sphere, and it is 878 grams. And if it gets kicked every day for about 3 hours on mostly hard surfaces like streets, how many days until it's mostly a sphere? So it's doing some approximating rock rounding time. Actually, here's a pretty awesome response. Here's rough back of the envelope estimates. So we're going to estimate about 5,400 kicks per day. You might grind off like 0.01 milligrams per kick. So between 5 and 54 milligrams per day. So to remove roughly 10% of the rock's mass. So 88 grams, knock off the big edges in the corners. You end up needing between 4.5 years and 44 years until that thing's a sphere. So middle of the road guess is 8 to 9 years of kicking 3 hours a day every day. Look, dude, I was going to watch you for maybe a month or so. I'm not going to watch for 8 or 9 years. And that's even assuming the 3 hours is like taken into a 30-second short. I don't even have time for that. Bottom line, bro, you're looking at thousands of days of steady kicking. You know what? I'm going to go make a comment. Bro, if you're kicking that thing 3 hours a day, that's roughly 4 to 45 years of daily kicking. Oh, look at the drama. This other user named Guy Kicking Brick. Did bro actually copy me? Oh, wow. He's got 103,000 followers. He just does the same thing, but he kicks a brick? Oh, Kicking Brick while I walk until it's a sphere. Season 2, episode 27. Oh my God. What? Come on, internet. If you want to see more high quality content like this, hit me up, patreon.com/Dylan Curious, or hit that join button right below the video. Let me know your thoughts on the rock kicking or any of the actual intelligence stuff that kind of came before that. And hopefully AI works out for all of us. See you guys in the next video.